All right, hello everybody. It's Carl, and I am going to go over some things with you today. Had a lot of requests for people who want me to kind of go from start to finish. So I'm going to go ahead and do that today, what you would do with your client. So first of all, we start with page one. So Mr. Jones, we're going to talk about Medicare today. If you have your Medicare card, let me go ahead and see it. I'm going to verify their Part A and their Part B. You can see here on the top with that little blue box. Part A, that covers your overnight services. Overnight services would be like hospitalizations, skilled nursing, hospice, anything you don't come home from. And then you have Part B. It says medical, but really it's anything that you come home from on the same day. Your doctor visits, x-rays, MRIs, CT scans, labs, and that stuff is Part B. Now, if we look at the bottom of this page, we can see that there's a lot of gaps inside of your coverage. So for example, your Part A deductible is $1,556. That starts on day one, when you get hospitalized. But that does cover the first 60 days. The problem starts coming in when you're in there longer than that. Days 61 through 90, for every day you're in the hospital, you're spending almost $400 a day, $389 each day you're in the hospital. And then days 91 through 150, it gets even more expensive. It's getting closer to $800 each day. 778 is the actual number. And then if you're in the hospital more than 6 months, Medicare stops paying completely. So you have all of that cost that goes right to you. Now, Part B is not as bad. You have a deductible that's $226, and then you have 20% of whatever your cost is. Now, that doesn't seem too bad for doctor visits. So let's say a doctor charges $100. The first couple is out of your pocket. Then you have a $26 finishing off that deductible, and then a $20 visit for each visit after that. However, when you start looking at things that are more expensive, like CT scans and PET scans and things like that, that are thousands of dollars, 20% of thousands of dollars can get very expensive. So we can see there are a lot of gaps inside of original Medicare. Now you can see from the chart here, I've kind of drawn out a flow chart for you, that there are a couple of different ways to fix those costs that are gapped out for you right now. The first way is to go down. That's the original Medicare path. I like to call it the prepay path because that's really what you're doing. You're prepaying away all of those costs except for that Part B deductible. The only part that you're missing once you buy a Medicare supplement, which would run you about $200 a month, is you're going to need drug coverage. And that's going to cost you somewhere in the ballpark of about $50 a month. So one way to look at it is to go down the original path, which is down, and that would cost you about $3,000 a year. And that's going to be a pretty stationary number because you're prepaying for that in monthly payments. Now, for people who are fairly healthy, they like to look at Medicare Advantage plans. What a Medicare Advantage plan is a plan that's managed by a private health company like a Humana, United, Aetna, Cigna, what have you. And they look very similar to plans that you might have had when you had group insurance. So they'll take your Part A, which is your overnight coverage, your Part B, which is your same day coverage. They'll add drug coverage, and they'll also give you other benefits. A lot of times it'll be like dental and vision and other things like that. And they come in the forms of either HMOs or PPOs. So if you're not familiar with how those work, let me start by explaining that. An HMO, which is that blue box on the right there, is built off of a network. That network will have doctors and hospitals, specialists, and pharmacies inside of a network. In other words, they're contracted with that company that is going to manage that plan. Now, a PPO is going to have the same type of structure. It's going to be built off of a network. However, if you need to go outside of network, you can do that. It's going to cost you a little bit more. So to give you an example of cost between the two, I've used specialist here. If you went to see a specialist on an HMO, you could expect to pay somewhere around $25. Now, if you went to the exact same specialist, even with the exact same company, but you chose the PPO version, that cost can be slightly higher, might be $40 or $50. So I put $50 on this example just to go on the high side. And that's if they're contracted. If they're not contracted, you'll have a different pay schedule. So it might be more like $60 or $70 for that visit. And so you'll have all these different companies that offer both HMOs and PPOs, or Medicare supplements and standalone drug plans. So how do we figure out what's best for you? Well, let's take a look at your last year. Your last year, first of all, let me get an idea of who your doctors are. Do you have a primary doctor? Oh, Dr. Feelgood. Great. What about your specialist? Okay, so you see Dr. Pumple for your cardiology, and then you see Dr. Arrington for pulmonary. Wonderful. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you the average of what seniors usually have for their usage in a year. And if yours is different, you can let me know, or we can just go by that and you can tell me if it's a little bit off. But the number of visits for primary care is normally about 5 visits per year. That's once per quarter. And then I usually throw an extra one in there for, if you catch the flu or COVID or what have you. So on an HMO, HMO is built to be a preventative plan. And so they want you to see your primary doctor as much as possible. Those visits are generally not going to have a cost to them. There might be a small cost, but if there is a cost, it would be minimal. Most of the plans that I see don't have a cost to see your primary care physician. Now, in a PPO, the structure is a little bit different, right? You have a lot more freedom. You can choose the doctors that you go to a little bit more freely, and it's not a preventative plan. So they are going to charge you a small fee to see your primary care, and that fee would probably be $10 or $20. So again, we'll go on the high side and say about $20. And if you had those 5 visits for the year, that would cost you about $100. Now, on the supplement side of things, you're going to notice I've already put prepaid on all of that. So on the bottom there, when you see the total, we're just going to say everything is prepaid except for $3,000. And that's going to include that $226 Part B deductible that you'd still have to pay. Now, on the specialist, let's say you see Dr. Pumple, Dr. Arrington, both quarterly, which would be 4 visits each. That's 2 doctors times 4, 8 visits at $25. And that's the example I gave you on that last page. That would run $200 for the year. And if we did the same thing with a PPO, using $50 for the copay, that gets you to $400 for the year. Again, the supplement is prepaid. Now, I don't know if you had any days in the hospital last year or not, but just for sake of comparison, I'm going to put you in the hospital for 1 day, virtually, just so we can do a cost comparison. And so on an HMO, we can say it's about $100. PPO, it's about $200 a day. And then we'll say you have an upcoming surgery. Same thing, about $100, about $150 for PPO. And again, it would be prepaid for the supplement. So the average senior, looking at an HMO, is going to spend about $400 for the year. A PPO, they would run about $850. And then a Medicare supplement is going to be standardized because you've already elected to prepay for those services. So whether you use those services or not, you're going to spend $3,000 plus whatever copays you have when you go to pick up your pharmacy drugs. And that would be the same for the HMOs or the PPOs as well. So if we could drop down to page 3 here, excuse me, we can see, oops, what long-term looks like, right? So on an HMO, if we break it down into 5 years, let's use a standard number, right? Your last year as your base number. So in HMO, we're going to start with 400. So the first year, you're at 400. Second year, you're at 400. On the third year, we're going to pretend that you had a catastrophic year and everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong. You had a stroke, you fell down, you broke a couple of legs, you have physical therapy every day. In other words, you are using every possible benefit in your plan and spending as much in your plan as possible. And so I'm going to introduce a new term to you called maximum out of pocket. Inside of the books that you might receive, it might say MOOP, MOOP, but that's what it stands for, maximum out of pocket. So that's a stopgap to let you know that after that amount, you will not pay anything medically. The plan will pick it up 100%. And then in year 4, what we're going to do is, since you had a bad year in year 3, we're going to give you some accelerated cost to show for maybe more specialist visits or maybe finishing up with some physical therapy or what have you. And then by the 5th year, you're back to normal. So you're back to your $400 normal usage. So if you put all that together, if you add that together, that's $8,700 that you have spent in 5 years on an HMO. Now, if we go a little bit further, year 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, you stay normal. You don't have any freak accidents. That 400 at 5 years is going to be another $2,000, which gives you a total for 10 years of $10,700. You can look here and see PPO. I've done the same thing. The numbers work out. In 5 years, you would have spent about $10,950. And then at 10 years, you're only about 15,200. And again, keep in mind that's with a catastrophic year. Now, Medicare supplements don't fluctuate because you're prepaying for all your services. So no matter if you go to a doctor once or 1,000 times, you've already prepaid for those costs. So 3,000 at 10 years is going to be 30,000. So that you can see the cost for average seniors, even with a couple years of some accelerated usage, is going to give you quite a bit of savings. So based on your annual usage, in my opinion, it looks like an HMO or a PPO would be the most effective way to align your benefits. Would you agree with that? Most of the time, you're going to hear yes. So let's talk about the prescriptions that you're taking. Let me write those down. Do you have any chronic illnesses that you are currently being treated for? There are some plans that offer benefits for people who have things like diabetes or certain heart conditions or stroke. So I just want to be what's the word I'm looking for? I want to be understanding of what your situation is in case you qualify for any of those plans. Also, I'd like to know if you've applied for extra help when you first got your Medicare kit that asked you if you wanted to sign up for Part A and Part B. There should have been a little application in there for extra help. Did you apply for that? If they did you get approved for it? And then most importantly, what is most important for you concerning your coverage? Now, the last thing I really want to teach you is how your drug coverage is going to work. Now, no matter which pathway we go, if we have standalone drugs coverage or if it's built in to one of the Advantage plans, Medicare makes their drug coverage work the same for any company that offers it. So this is how it's going to work. You're basically going to have 3 levels. In your initial coverage, you're going to have deductibles and copays. Usually your deductibles will only be for brand name drugs or specialty drugs. So you'll see like it's broken into tiers. So tier 1 and 2 will generally be generics. 3, 4 will be brands, and then 5 will be specialties. So you'll see up here, I put deductibles are usually only for tiers 3, 4, and 5. And then you would have set copays. You might have a $5 copay for tier 1. You might have a $20 or a $30 copay for tier 2. You might have a $50 or $60 copay for tier 3, and maybe a $100 copay for tier 4. Those are just averages. So that's how that would look. And then what would happen is every time that you have to spend money, whether it's through a deductible or a copay or what have you, you're actually creating let's say a piggy bank for the next stage. Okay. So let's talk about that next stage. That's the coverage gap, right? You go into that coverage gap once the retail cost of everything that you've done in the initial stage has reached that $5,800, right? So if you go to pick up a medicine, you might only pick up $10 copay, but it probably costs $200. So when the retail cost of your medicine reaches $5,800, you'll jump down into the coverage gap, but you'll have that piggy bank with you. So if you spent $50 on 4 or 5 medicines, you'll have that couple $100 or whatever you have spent in deductibles and copays in that piggy bank. Now, in the coverage gap, what happens is you share the responsibility of the cost of the retail cost of the drug with the manufacturer of the drug. So right now you spend approximately 25% of the retail cost, and the manufacturer will have to pick up the rest, which is about 75%. So to give you an example of why people notice that and get upset when they go into the donut hole, you might have a $10 copay in the initial coverage stage. And then when you go into the coverage gap, now you're paying 25%. That $10 might jump up to 40 or 50 or even higher. So here's where the piggy bank really comes into play. Whatever money you have spent in the initial coverage stage through your copays, through your deductibles, and now whatever percentage you pay in dollar form, plus whatever the manufacturer puts in, because their money also goes into that piggy bank. Once that money reaches $8,000, then you get into the catastrophic stage. Medicare has decided you have actually spent a lot of money on drugs. So we're going to give you some relief. And so what really happens is you go back into the initial coverage stage, but Medicare comes in and sets limits for what you're going to pay. So without getting into true detail, I'm going to say you're going to spend about $5 for any generic drugs as a maximum, around $10 for any brand name drugs as a maximum, and then you will be capped at 5% for any specialty drugs when they're normally in the 20% range. And that's how the drug coverage will work. There's some other information on there if you want to see how they're generally run, but these will vary from plan to plan. So please don't take that as true numbers until we look at what plan is going to be best for you. Now, at this point, we should already have had their information put into Sunfire, and we should have Sunfire open, or Spark, right? Sunfire, Spark, I use interchangeably. So what have I done? I've found a plan. So I've skipped through all that because you should have already had that information in, and we should have it open. So I'm going to look at a plan here. What do I want to look at? So I've highlighted some things to help you guys understand how to explain this to the client. So this particular plan is Cigna preferred. It's an HMO. In blue, I've highlighted the star rating. So what's important about the star rating? Well, for one, it's 3 years old. So that means that the plan's been around for at least 3 years. And they have 4.5 stars out of 5, which means that they're doing a lot of things right. They get judged on about 26 different areas. And some of those things are customer service, how well they pay their bills, how quickly they get referrals sent to other doctors, things of that nature. So they have a very high star rating, which means that they're doing very well. I've highlighted in yellow some of the benefits of this plan that you might want to highlight to the client. The maximum out of pocket for this plan is only $3,700. So if you think about how I did page 2 and that $6,700 that I used, now we've already dropped that number $3,000. So our numbers are already much lower than what I showed them just in our outline with this particular plan. They don't have a medical deductible. They don't have a drug deductible. They have dental, vision, hearing, over-the-counter benefits, and transportation all built into this plan. And if you're looking for what the basic copay is for their primary care, it's $0, and specialists are only $10. In pink here, I have highlighted where you can add medications and pharmacy. Now, you could have done this previously when you were going through your client database or building your client. But if you hadn't, you still have the option to add medications and pharmacies while you're in there. And then doctors, I wanted to show you that the doctors can be added in there, right? So Douglas Pennington is the doctor that I used. This doctor does not use this plan. No locations in network. So that means this doctor is not going to be a good fit for this plan. So at that point, if the client really, really likes this plan, we have to have that conversation. Do you really want to use that doctor, or should we find a different plan for you that allows you to stay with your doctor? Okay. If we want more details about this specific plan, on the right-hand side, highlighted in that purple and blue, there's that details button. You can click that and get into the full details of this plan. It expounds into more. If I want to compare plans, that little orange highlighted area allows me to check that box and then scroll down into more plans and check those as well. And finally, on this screen, if you wanted to, or if the client wanted to enroll in this plan, you hit the enroll button and you just follow the information that you need to fill in. So let's go back to compare for a second. When I hit that compare button, I'm selecting 3 of the different Cigna plans just for ease of use. So you can see what it's going to look like. They're going to put them side by side for you to be able to look at what the benefits are, right? So I've highlighted a couple of things for you to look at. Maximum out of pocket, right? 2 of the plans are the same. They're $3,700, but the one plan is $4,700. If you also notice on that True Choice PPO on the far right, you have a second out of pocket. That's because you have an in-network out of pocket and you have an out of network out of pocket, or a combined out of pocket. So be a little bit sensitive to things like that, where the first 2 products that I'm showing you here, those are HMOs, so they are network only. And then the PPO has a 4,700 in-network maximum, but a combined maximum of 8,950. So what that means is if they decide to go and get a lot of their services out of network, where they're paying a little bit higher copays, and their out-of-pocket cost for their medical services reaches, let's just say $9,000, the plan is going to pick up everything in or out of network going forward. Okay. Now, another thing I wanted to highlight, because I've had a lot of questions about that, is Part B give back. First of all, what is that? And then how do you explain that to the client when you have things that say up to $100, right? So 2 of these plans, it's not even available. It just says not available, right? But that middle plan says up to $100. Well, here's why it says up to $100. The true answer is that it's $100, right? The caveat to that would be if they are maybe a low income subsidy and the state Medicaid program is paying their Part B premium, and they don't have to pay that 171 or 162 or whatever it is at the current time, If they don't pay their Part B, they're not going to get a Part B give back. But if they are paying their Part B, then they will get that $100. Okay. Now, something I want to show you as you scroll down into one of the plans, and this is in a particular plan, not all three, you would have to go into one plan. On the bottom, there are links to the specific plan documents, right? And the most important of those is the summary of benefits. There's also evidence of coverage and star ratings and everything else. You can look at Spanish versions and everything else. But the most important of that is summary of benefits. And so what I did on this next slide is I've kind of taken a few pieces of a summary of benefit for one of these plans and shown you how to look at that. Now, this will be all drawn out in one long document. It'll probably be in 4 or 5 sections. But I wanted to be able to show you how to read this, right? So for example, I like to talk about how there's stop gaps inside of stop gaps when it comes to Medicare Advantage. So first of all, let's look at the hospital, inpatient hospital coverage. If you look at how this one is set up, it's $285 per day for the first 6 days. And then after that, you have a $0 copay, right? So if we just rounded that up at $300 for 6 days, 3 times 6 is $1,800. That's the most that they're going to pay for a hospital incident stay, right? So this is one of the PPO plans. So you also have a second category where it says 40%. That would be out of network. Now, chances are an emergency where they have an ambulance come to them or something like that, they're going to be considered in network anyway. So $285 at 6 days. Really, the worst case scenario for them on this plan is $1,800 in the hospital. That would be one of the highest copays that they could probably have going through. I also highlighted the doctor visits, right? That's also in the summary of benefits. Primary care is 0. If it's in network, it would be 40 if they're out of network. Specialist, it would be 25 if they're in network, 55 if they're out of network. Okay, so that's the basics of the medical part of the summary of benefits. And as you open those up, you'll see that there's a lot more information. I'm just taking a snippet of it so you can take a look at it and be able to explain that to your clients. Some of the other things I wanted to cover, because we don't cover those very often, are some of the other benefits or additional benefits that could be inside of a plan. So this plan would offer over-the-counter benefits. OTC is what it's called. This plan gives the client $65 every 3 months to go through the catalog and pick products that they might need. Now, things inside over the counter would be things like toothpaste, deodorant, Theraflu, Band-Aids, Q-tips. There's a lot of things that are inside an over-the-counter benefit. Now, what I like to tell people is, imagine going into a Walgreens and you take out all the junk food and fun stuff, and you look at just the medical stuff, the things that you would need. That's the things that is inside of an over-the-counter benefit catalog. And they get $65 every 3 months. Some plans give you a lot more than that, some give you less, but this particular plan would allow them $65 every 3 months to spend. And that's at no charge to them. It's free things that they can buy. Now, if we look on the right side here, another benefit is that they can have home delivered meals if they are hospitalized or they go into skilled nursing, right? They don't pay anything for those meals. And it tells you what the limitations are. They are limited to 14 meals per discharge from the hospital stay or skilled nursing facility. And if they're hospitalized more, you actually can get more. But what they're telling you here is you have a limit of 56 meals per year. Another benefit would be the vision benefit. This particular plan offers $200 worth of either glasses or contacts, frames, or upgrades to existing stuff for their vision needs. And then an additional benefit, a lot of plans offer some kind of incentive, Cigna, Humana, United, etc. This is money that they can earn for doing the things that help the plan keep them healthy. So in this particular plan, it says that you can earn up to $200, which is loaded onto a card that they can spend in a variety of ways. So this is all pulled from the summary of benefits. Once you have picked a plan, I like to go right to the summary of benefits and run through that with the client so that they can see it. And then once they're done with that, you can go ahead and just enroll the client. So that makes the client very happy. Now that's the end of the presentation, but at that point, you would just go hit back, or you would just hit the enroll button. You can hit it there on that particular plan, or you can go back to where you were doing your comparison. They have enroll buttons pretty much everywhere. So they want you to enroll the client when you are ready, when they are ready to go ahead and join a particular plan. So hopefully that helps. That's how I would run from teaching the client all the way through the enrollment process. The only thing that I didn't show you is right before we picked a particular plan, before I showed the actual benefits, I would ask them to do a scope of appointment. So before I showed any of the numbers on this page, or on this page, or on the summary of benefits for a particular company, I need to send them a scope of appointment. And you can do that through the Sunfire, through Spark, through email, through text, and you should do it as an immediate, because what we have done when we did our pages 1, 2, 3, and 4, what we did is we educated. We didn't know what company we were dealing with. But once we got into the enrollment platform, we started looking at particular companies like this one here. Then what we did is we started opening up where we need a permission for them to see those benefits. Okay, so before you actually get into the benefits part, after you've done page 4, go ahead and do a scope of appointment. After you have looked at the different plans to see what's available, and then go ahead into a summary of benefits for that particular plan and enroll them. Guys, I hope this helps. Hopefully this answers a lot of questions from you that were looking for that process, how it goes from start to finish. Have a great day and get out there and sell. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.